Hi guys, welcome to COSC100 Tutorial 6 exercise number 5. Now in this exercise we're going to get you to create your own table and insert some data into that table and finally construct a series of select queries. So in this exercise you'll be doing a little bit more on your own. In the last couple I've given you a fair bit of starting code to get you going. So the first task is to create your table to store some information about books. Now this table is going to have 5 fields in it. It's going to have a book ID, it's going to have a book title, a subject area, an author name, an author first name, and an author last name. Now the book ID field is going to be an integer type field, and it's also going to be the primary key for our table as well. And the book title, subject area, and author name, author first name, and author last name fields are all going to be character type fields, and we'll have to choose an appropriate character length. And the book title will also be not null. So I've gone through, just so you don't have to sit there and watch me type all of this out, I've already had a crack at creating my table, also my subsequent insert statement. So if I zoom in a little here, you can see that I've written up the SQL here for my books table. So I've got the create table keywords followed by the name of my table, which will be called books. Then I've specified my book ID. I've made it and used the integer data type for this field, and I've also put the primary key clause up with this column definition, just so that Postgres knows that's going to be the unique identifier for my table. I've then gone through and specified a book title, and I've made that a character type field. Now the length of this field that I've chosen is 40 characters. I've chosen to be generous with that so that in future if we want to have a really long title books inserted in there we can. And I've specified that this field be not null. So that means that every record that's entered into this table will have to have a value specified for the book title. Subsequently, I've created the subject area, author first name, and author last name fields to be character types. I've chosen a character length of 20 for the subject area and 50 for the first and last name of the author. So we can go through and run this code. If I just open up my database here, you'll see that in my current database, I don't have any of the books table. So if I go through, I can quickly create my books table. I'll copy that into another SQL worksheet because I don't want to run everything at once here. So if I just jump into pgadmin, quickly open up a new worksheet, can drop my create statement in there so you can see that it's the same create statement we saw before. Run through and the query is successfully returned. So now I can go and check that my table has been created, which it has. So now I have my books table. You'll notice that when you create the books table that PostgreSQL slightly readjusts your query, particularly the primary key field. The primary key specification has been moved down to the bottom of the statement instead of being up on the column definition. This is just an alternate way that Postgres represents the primary key, so you don't need to worry about that, but the primary key definition is still there. So the next task is to insert our table of data into our new books table. So for each of these rows, you'll have to create an insert statement. Now to do this, the quickest way to create the insert statements is actually to copy all of the items of data and paste them into your worksheet. So if we paste all of these items in, going through here, I'll just close that one down and open up a new worksheet. So if I open up my worksheet, if I drop all these items in, you'll see it's maintained the row spacing in these items. So now we can go through and simply enter in the bits and pieces that we need to put in there, so that we don't have to type out the names and the items as we move through. So the first thing to do is we have to put the insert into keywords. The table that we're inserting into is books, and when we put the values keyword in, then we open our brackets up, and we'll need to start formatting our items out into a comma separated list. So recall that the ID is an integer type field, so we don't need to single quote it, but the title is going to be a character type field. So if I remove the extra spaces and put single quote characters around that one, I then need to follow it. Again, we put single quote characters around the subject area because it's a character type field. And again, we put single quote characters around the author's first name and last name. We need to close our opening brackets and put our semicolon on the end to terminate our SQL statement. So you can see there that we've created our first insert statement fairly quickly by using the cut and paste data. So points to note, make sure that you surround all of the character type fields with single quote characters, and make sure you type them in from the keyboard. Don't use the caret character. So for example, if we use the caret character, which can be found up on the top left-hand side of the keyboard, you'll see that it's no longer highlighted correctly because this is syntactically incorrect. We have to use the single quote character for this one. So I've got a set of insert statements that I prepared before, just so you don't have to sit there and watch me enter them. So if I remove those, I'll just zoom out a little bit here so that you can see them. So I've gone through and created all of my insert statements. I can now run those insert statements. You can see that's successfully executed. So if we jump into our books table rather and view the data, you'll see that I've got 10 rows of data successfully inserted into my database table. So now we've got our database successfully entered into our table, we can start making some queries that work on our data. So the first query we're going to create returns the book title, author first name, and author last name for each book. So this is going to be a select query. So again, if we start with a select statement, I'll just zoom in. Select. Now the columns that we want to return are the book title, so I'll just grab that from over here. The book title, again, it's a comma separated list, so I'll put a comma in. We want the author first name and author last name. So I'll put the author first name in there, a comma, and the author last name. So I'll just change that to an L. So in order to keep this zoomed in, I'm actually going to move down to the next line. I'm going to put a from part of the select statement in there, and the table that we're working on is the books table. Now I don't need a where clause in this situation because I want to return these fields for every record. So all I need to do is go and run my query. You can see that I've returned all of these items in the data output pane below. So I have the book title, first name, and last name returned for that query. So let's move to the second query. So in this situation, we're going to be returning the book title and subject area for each book. So again, this is going to be a select query. We've got the book title already in here, but now all we have to do is return the subject area. So if I drop the subject area in here for each book, again, we don't need to filter our rows, so we don't need a where clause. We can just go and execute that one. You'll see that we've now returned the subject area. So the next select query asks us to return the book title for each book with a subject area of computers. So again, we're going to be constructing a select query. Now in this situation, we're only returning a single column, which is the book title. We're returning that from books, but we have to filter our rows. We only want to return books with a subject area of computers. So we need to put a where clause into this query. And the where clause is going to be, we're looking for the subject area that's equal to computers. Now, the subject area field is a character type field, so we need to single quote the category, the subject area that we want to compare it to, because it's going to be working on character type data. When we do this, we can now go and execute our query. And we'll see that we've returned the 2 programming books that are listed in our database. So you see there's only 2 books that have a subject area of computers, and we've returned those records. The final query asks us to return the author first name and author last name for the book with the title Learning Python. So again, we can start by modifying our select query. We need to include the author first name and author last name. So again, I'll just drop that one in and change that to the last name. Points to note about specifying the fields in the select query: we don't need to single quote or double quote them when we're listing them in our list up the top here, and we don't need to single or double quote the table name either. So the second part of this query is to put the filter. We only want to get the book with the title Learning Python. So we need to filter based upon the book title field, and the filter will be, we only want to return books, the author information from Learning Python. Just fix that one up. And when we've done this, we can now go and execute our code, and we've returned the author for that book. So that's just the final exercise for today's practical session, just to get you playing around with those select queries. If you have any questions, please let me know.